Our top story there, the war on tariffs continues to dominate the international newspapers as well. This Tuesday, Diptyque Laurent has joined us to take us through the reactions. Let's start maybe with the Chinese papers.
Yeah, absolutely. Eve, in response to Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs hikes last week, China said it would impose duties of 34% on U.S. goods. And in retaliation to China's retaliation, Donald Trump has promised new tariffs hikes, bringing that total to 104% on Chinese goods. Now, no word on whether China will be reacting once again, but certainly there's a lot of comment about this game of one-upping, really putting the world economy quite literally here through the grater, as you see in this illustration by Song Chen from the China Daily. Now, speaking of the China Daily today, in its opinion pages, in this article here, this opinion, you'll find a lot of stern warnings and defiance from the Chinese press. This opinion writer here saying that Washington must learn that arrogance does not pay. I quote, "What is unfolding in the U.S. is a sad story of a country becoming increasingly authoritarian and private enterprises who are now at the behest of an all-powerful president."
Lots of talk as well about people calling it a Black Monday.
Yeah, that's something that the Global Times is looking at today. This is the Communist Party's official paper here. Global stock markets usher in Black Monday over U.S. tariffs, it says on its front page. Indeed, the news of these tariffs threw world stock markets into decline. That's why they're calling it Black Monday. The government paper quotes a foreign minister's spokesperson, Lin Jian, as accusing the U.S. of economic bullying, unilateralism and protectionism. Stern warnings also from the editors of the Global Times today, who say that the tariff blackmail cannot intimidate China. The paper also really trying to take the moral high ground in its editorial, defending its countermeasures as necessary, not just for China, but to actively uphold a fair and free world trading system, I quote.
And Diptyque, in a lot of articles, you get the impression that China is nearly ready for this trade war.
Yeah, indeed. In fact, in that Global Times article here, the editors actually quote Bloomberg as saying that China has already, quote, trade-proofed its economy, or trade war-proofed its economy. And this is kind of something that's evoked also in the Sydney Morning Herald today. In this, the writer here is saying, why would China back down now? Because this is actually a really good opportunity for China, really explaining that in many ways China could emerge the winner from this trade war. Under Biden, the U.S. and its allies were really aligned against China. Now, with all that Donald Trump has announced, many of the U.S.'s allies have no choice but to turn towards China. And the Sydney Morning Herald explains that as a result, you'll have a very isolated and poor U.S. and a new world order with China at the helm. So that's an interesting viewpoint. From the Wall Street Journal, the editors have an entirely novel idea today. Why not call Donald Trump's bluffs? The editors say a rather unorthodox suggestion. Calling his bluff would involve offering zero tariffs on all bilateral goods and services. A long shot, no doubt, it admits.
Yeah, slightly tempting on one side. Meanwhile, though, we do say, look at the US, there's been a flurry of different statements, Diptyque, coming out from the United States about their health secretary, Robert Kennedy Jr., and what he wants to do next.
Yeah, it's not clear now. It comes, though, in the wake of a measles outbreak in Texas with the death this weekend of a second child, bringing to total the number of people who have died from measles to 3. Now, the Washington Post explains in this article that some unvaccinated children hospitalized last month with measles had signs of vitamin A deficiency. It's prompted a surge in demand for vitamin A supplements like cod liver oil, which the health secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. touted last month as a potential remedy for measles. Now, this website here, Neoscope, is a science and tech website. They say as the measles crisis deepens, Kennedy is suddenly a huge fan of vaccines, because indeed on the weekend he revised his comments to endorse the mumps, measles and rubella vaccine as being the most effective against this epidemic that this website at least calls dire and entirely preventable. Now, in an interview with the Associated Press, meanwhile, Dr. Peter Marks, he was a former vaccine chief of the Food and Drug Administration, he speaks of an extraordinary struggle with Kennedy's team, saying that he was in many ways forced to leave his position. He had agreed to grant access to Kennedy's associates to the vaccine adverse events reporting system, really containing a lot of important information about potential vaccine-related issues. But he said he refused to let them directly edit the data inside because, I quote, frankly, we don't trust them. So really incredible scenes of this kind of struggle between the FDA and the new administration. Marks eventually resigned, or rather was forced to resign.
Yeah, found he couldn't work. Well, let's end, Diptyka, with something potentially more positive. The return of an extinct wolf.
Well, I know you say it with a question mark. It depends on how you feel about this. But in any case, it is quite an impressive feat. There's a lot of ethical questions about it afterwards. Now, Time magazine actually reports that the company Colossal Biosciences say its team have brought back a version of the dire wolf. This was a wolf. This was a canine that roamed America, emerging during the late Pleistocene era, and they actually went extinct 9,500 years ago. Time magazine were actually able to meet the 3 pups who were born at the end of last year and early this year. It explains that the scientists at the company had deciphered the dire wolf genome, rewrote the genetic code of the common gray wolf to match it, and then they'd use domestic dogs as surrogate mothers to carry the pups to term and bring into the world Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi. It's a feat for genetic engineering. A lot of ethical questions, of course, as well. Gizmodo notes that this company also recently successfully engineered the woolly mouse, its ultimate project, bringing back the woolly mammoth, Eve.
Okay, yeah, I have so many questions to go over that story, I have to say. But thanks a lot for highlighting it for us, particularly on there with our international press review. Time for us to take